If ICE does not change course and fast, one of their latest arrests could almost certainly result in the death of a man whose brother came here to the United States specifically to save his life. The 37-year-old man whose life now hangs in the balance because of what ICE is doing. This is Jose Pacheco, who lives in the Chicago area. His brother, Jose, had been trying to come here, had failed his initial asylum interview. Okay, around that time is when he learned of his brother's diagnosis of end-stage kidney failure. So this is incredibly serious, this is as dire and serious as it can get, and he desperately needs help. He desperately needs a transplant. The best possible way to get that is from a close relative. It makes it much more likely to actually work. And look, he actually has one who's willing to help him out, make this massive sacrifice that many people have made. It's super difficult, but he's willing to do it. So after learning of his brother's diagnosis, he made an appointment with immigration authorities, but was put in removal proceedings and detained. Since there were no deportation flights to his home country at the time, he was placed in ICE supervision back in March of last year and allowed to join his brother in Chicago. Okay, so this is not great. It's a complex situation, but at least he's with him. Maybe he can help him out. Unfortunately, then ICE shows up on his doorstep. The pair had an appointment at a hospital ahead of the organ transplant surgery. But those plans are now totally up in the air after ICE arrested González back on March 3rd as he was making breakfast at his home for his sick brother. The man who needs his help says, "We both cried when they arrested him because we both know he is my lifeline. Terrible for him because now he might die. Terrible for his brother who just wants to do what he can to save him, but they might not be able to do that." González was initially held at Clay County Detention Center in Indiana, but is now in the quote process of being transferred, making his deportation even more likely. He could soon face deportation, but has asked for humanitarian parole so they can donate his kidney. He says, quote, "After that, I will return to Venezuela." Why would you not let him do this? Dear God. Again, not a rhetorical question. We're trying to ask as few of those on TDR in this era as we can. This is a serious question to ICE, to the specific officers who are gonna make the determination of whether he gets out on the humanitarian parole. Why would you not let him help? He's gonna do it. He's gonna save a life and then he's gonna go, okay? And again, people in the chat are saying the cruelty is the point. That's why I totally understand that. I am trying to appeal to their decency, which might not exist, their sanity, which might not be there anymore. And so it's gonna come down to that ICE officer. His brother, by the way, if he doesn't get the help from his brother who could be deported, he might have to wait 4 to 5 years on a transplant wait list if this organ exchange doesn't happen. And maybe he'll survive that. Probably not, probably not. So again, a life is on the line. By the way, he has 3 children, 2 9-year-old twins and a 17-year-old. They live in Venezuela. They're not even here. He hopes to just live so that at some point he can actually see them. Again, if you had any sense of decency, compassion, empathy, respect for the inherent humanity of the people involved in this, let alone if any of the individuals involved in this decision making are, I don't want to use a term that's gonna make them uncomfortable, but like Christians, okay? I feel like Jesus would be pretty clear about what needs to happen here, but unfortunately we're waiting to find out. Now, there is no shortage of horrific stories coming out of what ICE is doing, what Border Patrol is doing, what they're allowed to do under Donald Trump's ridiculous and cruel mass deportation scheme. But are these actually breaking through to the American people? Are they learning? Are they turned off fundamentally by the horrors that we're seeing that we're trying so much to focus on here in TDR? Well, there is actually a new poll that implies that maybe people don't want to see this stuff happen. In particular, they don't want to see people disappeared to Salvadoran prisons for terrorists. And so here's a YouGov poll. It says deporting immigrants without criminal convictions to El Salvador to be imprisoned without letting them challenge the deportation in court. So maybe they still go, but could you at least like have a little bit of a due process, a little bit of a procedure? Only 15% of respondents said they strongly support. 11% said that they somewhat support. That's a total of 26% who support the move by the Trump administration to at least some degree. 46% strongly oppose and 15% somewhat oppose, meaning 26 to 61 support for just taking these people, no due process, get them the hell out of here. Okay, that is wildly unpopular. Now, when you break it down by party ID, you're not gonna be surprised to find out that Republicans are more in support of this, but maybe not as much as you might think. 32% of Republicans strongly support these deportations. Only 1% of Democrats, that makes me feel a lot better to see that. And only 13% of independents. Okay, so 2 out of 3 Republicans, some of them might still support it a little bit, but they are not sold by this because they can on some level see how deeply inhumane it is. And basically no Democrats, and I always like to stress this, independents are way more like Democrats on this topic than they are like Republicans. That is important. It's important for our own internal evaluation of the people around us in this country and for considerations of elections coming forward. Everybody needs to bear that in mind, including the candidates. Now, all of that poll was done before the administrative error that got a totally innocent person sent to El Salvador. And now the Republicans are just saying they're not gonna do literally anything to get him back. They know that they messed up. They're not. So we should assume these numbers will probably continue to trend in the right direction as people see more horrible instances of this. But that's where they're at right now. Now, we do have to acknowledge that other polls in the past have implied that more Republicans, but also more independents are in favor of this sort of thing, not necessarily the worst cases than we might want, okay? But it is possible that it's trending in this direction. And I think that's good, okay? If there's anything that we can look to draw hope, maybe a little bit of optimism for the future, I'm not going to turn against that. And so you can see, for instance, a YouGov poll, 53% of Americans at that point, this is back in March, approve of Trump's immigration handling overall. That had ticked down slightly from February. And so, again, that's a very narrow majority. It's still way higher than I'd like it to be, but just to give you a full picture of what's going on. Now, we are learning really fast. I'm just gonna give a quick update because there was a person in the chat, Key John says that according to CNN, there is an update on the story that we just talked about. And supposedly they're going to release him on Friday. And perhaps as a result of that, he might have the clearance and the time to actually go through with the transplant. That would be great. I would want us to go much further than that. I think this is exactly the sort of person that we would want to be in America if they're willing to do this for a family member. Remains to be seen, but thank you, Key John, for that update. We're gonna do more reading about that. Maybe we'll talk about it more on the show.